Hey guys, welcome back to PommyInOz. I hope we're all doing really well. If you are brand new around here, please drop a like, drop a subscribe. It does mean the world to me. If you are a returning PommyInOzer, good day to you. So guys and girls, what we're doing today is we're going to look at the preview of the Gold Coast game. So without any further ado, let's go straight in to what it is about. So the mathematics for Carlton are quite simple really at the moment. Somehow, finals is still on the agenda. And it's tough really to kind of understand how, because if you look at everyone from like below 6th who is still in the finals home, every side is trying their best to fuck it up. It's an interesting game because it reminds me a lot of 2020. Remember that spurt of games, GWS, Collingwood and Adelaide, where it was kind of, the mathematics again were similar to this. Just keep winning, it's in Carlton's hands. And then we kept failing, but results went our way, so we had a second chance, ultimately ending in the Bryce Gibbs farewell game, as I like to call it. And yeah, we carried him off with it, our hopes for finals. So what we've got to do here really is, you'd hope that they've learned from that first and foremost, because Gold Coast, they suffered from the COVID last week, and it's not a good side, let's be honest. They're not playing good football. That we should really be looking at this game as 40 points. But there's always that inclination, isn't there, with you, with Carlton, that they can let you down. And I'm going to go on this tack. Last week, if you go through the analytics and stuff, it is such a different side than one we've seen. You'd actually, to get them numbers, you're going back to 2019 pre-St Kilda to see that kind of genetic makeup to our side in the terms of its movement, its craft, and what it's doing. And that leads me to ask the question. If we go back to 2016, Richmond were littered with injuries, and they kind of fell across the game style that you saw now. The style was there, but it wasn't ingrained. And then due to selection issues, due to a few in-game scenarios, they kind of stumbled across, and towards the end of that year, they started to build the foundation blocks of what 2017 was. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to win a dynasty, but what I am saying is, if Carlton are smart, they've stumbled across what worked, and it worked exceptionally well, and I don't think anyone can argue. They defended well, and it's okay saying that there was a few scoring shots more than us and stuff like that. That's all valid points, but if you actually look at the defensive structure as we showed last week, it's absolutely different, and that comes from our ball movement. Now, Gold Coast, if you look at them, what Gold Coast do is their game style is archaic, almost, in essence. It's very similar to how we play, incidentally, when it doesn't go well. It's a territory-based game. It's a mark-heavy-based game. It requires a lot of tackle pressure for it to get the results that are positive for it. It's a side that is littered with talented youngsters. And it's, in my opinion, I look at the Gold Coast side and I don't think it's used efficiently. But it's a very archaic method of playing football. It's not a modern-day progressive game style. Now, it creates holes because if you've got a territory-based game style, naturally players drift away from each other. They create separation, looking for the ball to go into the pockets that they use. Now, if we look at this graph here, this is the habitual ball movements. And you can see they litter down the right-hand side. And that is kind of conducive with what you'd expect to see. When you've got 62% of the time spent in the back half, you're obviously clearing your lines. They like to build from the wide part of the ground. Why? Well, it's easier to defend from there. If you turn the ball over there, genuinely you've got further to go, ergo it's easy to be in position. However, when you are playing a very territorial-based game style, you find players become congested naturally in the fall of the ball. And what you find with Gold Coast Suns is they have to run a lot of Ks for this game style to work. And it's what I was talking about with Carlton a couple of weeks ago. It's so labour intensive, and that's why you see these fourth quarter blowouts from Gold Coast, because no one can run possibly the amount of distance required per player to facilitate this structure. Now, part of that this year for Gold Coast has been their injuries and what's happened to them. Kind of like, I wouldn't say like Carlton, because their injuries for me are a little bit more pivotal in the way the style of movement and what they aim to achieve from set situations. But it's vulnerable. And if Carlton play like they did last week, with the short, sharp, everyone moves in transition together, that spells disaster if you're a Gold Coast fan. That should be a plus 60 win. Now, let's see how you can do this. Now, if we look at this slide here, and this is the first one I want to talk about, and we covered this last week, and it's something that I'm hoping to see a bit more of. Around the stoppage situations when you watch Gold Coast play, they play a very traditional kind of, it's a three-stage system, right? One, it's either win the ball and get it to hands and get the ball moving on the outside. Traditional how everyone else plays. Second, it's a panic of territory. If in doubt, kick it out is kind of their mantra. And then the third is if they can't get their hands on the ball, they just try and lock it in and simply reset a stoppage. So what Carlton have got to do here, and I hope we see it, I hope to see Honey and Williamson drift up in these stoppage situations, particularly around the centre bounce as well. We saw Carlton do that. They just float off from their starting positions as the ball is bounced as per the rules of the game. And it creates that extra. And when you've got them extras in there, makes it even harder to get it out. So you're going to get two eventualities from this. You're either going to win it, and then you've got men on deck ready to receive. A simple little handball out the back. Williamson's in a bit of space. Find Honey out the front. Play a 1-2 with him. Walsh is out. And that is what you've got to look at. You've got to look at really alleviating that. The second option is it's contested. They kick it. And that is where it will play into an uncontested mark for Carlton. It's a reset and go again. Really important around the stoppages that I think that this is what the modern day, it's a very aggressive style, but I think when you look at the way Carlton play the game and the skill set available to it, in my opinion, it is just a logical method. And hopefully we see more of it. Now, the spacing behind we'll talk about here. Now, Kerno brings something that I think is very underrated, and you saw it a lot last week. When he leads, and he's a very good leader to the ball, he naturally takes people with him, and he naturally creates space in behind. When you've got Eddie Betts there, and Zach Fisher, that is brilliant for you. That's what you want. And it also helps Harry out because it's going to create a 1-out for him. Carlton have got to look to use this. Now, we've got Walsh here as the ball carrier here. Lockie O'Brien did it a lot as well successfully. When you've got natural movement like he does, because Kerno is a natural ball of energy, create space in behind. Now, when you watch how they play, Gold Coast, it's a very park the bus mentality, really. It's really regimented of 2 rows of 3 in that back line, and then the rest kind of fill in the space. And it's a very regimented game plan. It's a very systematic system. It's almost kind of, it's nearly man on man, really. And this is the issue when people talk about man on man in the zonal system. Most teams now play with a zonal offense. So when that happens, that is a disaster if you're man on man, because man on man requires a lot of focus with people moving all the time. It can get messy very quick. And that's what we're going to be looking for here. I'll be really expecting to see a lot of these running patterns. And I want you to look at them in-game this week. Really look out for them. I'll be on the live. I'll try and mention them. Now, for me, the keys to this are really simple for Carlton. It's really play a bit sharp, short, sharp, really get the ball moving in transition. Stay together as well, because these guys have the ability. There is enough talent in this team to really hurt you on the counter-attack. Gold Coast have done this quite successfully throughout the year as well. It's well worth noting that even though last week I think is kind of a bit of an anomaly because of COVID, genuinely they do play to a very systematic game plan, and it does fall off towards the end because the game plan is very labour intensive, and that's because the natural style doesn't have the natural elements in the list yet to play it. It's a very talented list, but big outs for them, Greenwood particularly as well, and how they play it kind of just falls by the wayside a little bit, their plan. Carlton, if they can be first to the ball and really implement that tackle pressure, lock it in, you're going to see the door open, and it'll open quite quickly, because when Gold Coast have conceded, they've conceded kind of en masse. I'm really excited about this game, because this could be, every game's must win, but this game has an element to it. They go into this game with a 40-plus win to Port Adelaide. Somehow finals is on the agenda. And it can't be understated, that effect, because there's so much going on off field. They have to believe. And it's amazing how a couple of wins, the landscape will look different for these players, the coach, and even the board. It's a very, very winnable game. It's a very winnable game. If we play to the strengths that we've seen, particularly with, I think, the understated influence of Charlie Curnow and Josh Honey, what they bring, and also to a lesser extent, Lockie O'Brien, who isn't really talked about, offers natural width. Be interesting because we saw Richmond's game plan defensively, which is very, very good, kind of was bred through necessity. And that shorter ball movement keeps you in places. The tackle numbers were up last week. The pressure acts were up last week. The key facets of Teague's mantra were back last week via very simple change. Not much changed, but it's dramatic. And that's why we talk about this game, professional sport. It's the game of 1%. I am super excited about this game. I don't want to get into the Kool-Aid yet, but I'm starting to sup on it because there's a huge chance. They beat Gold Coast. There's no reason they should fear Port. Everyone beats a top 8 side. And then it's really home and hosed, really, from that avenue. But for me, it's important we see what we saw last week cemented. The learnings are cemented. Very, very good game as a tune-up fight for Port Adelaide because you can really afford, with the space they give you up and down the ground, to work on things in-game. And they should be good enough. I'm super excited about this as well because you've got Ben King versus Wheatering. You've got Tuck Miller up against Walsh. You've got Swallow versus Cripps. You've got some really entertaining matchups. You've also got Brendan Ellis, who we're going to see with Lockie O'Brien on the opposite wing. See how an elite player like Ellis does, in my opinion, who's very underrated. Seeing if Lockie can really take a string out of his bow and see how integral wingmen are today. It's kind of an unforgotten position. Super excited about this one. Let me know what you're doing. Please check out in the link in the description. We've got the full scouting report where I go into this in more detail. And come and join me on the live if you are in lockdown or you aren't going to, well, you won't be going to the game. If you haven't got anything to do and you want to stick with me and Riley will be doing it. I look forward to welcoming you all. Guys and girls, stay safe during lockdown. Pom out.